Hey, we want to welcome you to the power of our story. Each week, we get the pleasure of sitting around and talking about a leadership principle, having a leadership conversation. And this is a very informal conversation, but there's a lot of depth, and we're really fired up that you get a chance to join us. I want to talk today about a tension that exists, especially in the lives of leaders and in the lives of ambitious people. All of us, and if you're ambitious, you have a list of things to do, and you have goals. You've got short-term goals, you've got medium range goals. Some of us are courageous enough. In my coaching course right now, we're doing the 10 goals that you must accomplish before you die. And we've got guys as young as 40, and we have one man in there that's 70. And so, we set goals, and that's obviously the right thing to do. And of course, if you're in corporate is all about quarterly and annual targets. And so we're a culture that understands the importance of being driven to goals. And then we come across a lot of sources that tell us that we should be present in the moment. And it's really more about enjoying the journey, right? So there's this whole school of thought that says, hey, you can't control the outcomes, and you can't, but you've got to learn how to enjoy the journey. And so, I wanted to have this conversation with you on this call because I do think it's a tension. I think it's like, well, really, can you do both? I guess you can. All things are possible. But to give a little bit more dimension to the conversation, and I think this is just a facet of the conversation, I wanted to introduce um, Steve Jobs, who was notorious uh, for dismissing phrases like, this just can't be done. We need more time. And he believed that our culture was actually educated in this as a limiting belief. I mean, I think that's a very powerful thing if you wrap your mind around that. So he had this mind, which I think was just absolutely, it was extraordinary and it was fantastic, but he had a mind that saw past what a lot of us would say today, culturally and society and otherwise, that are just limitations that we think about that have been placed on us through probably what we've been trained to think. And one of the examples he used as just being an out of the box thinker was when he was developing some technologies in the 70s, Apple, and he wanted a mouse at that time, which was very important, connecting that feature to the screen. And he wanted a mouse that can be multi-directional and move everywhere on a screen. And at that time, his lead engineer said it just can't be done. Well, Steve fired him right after he said that, and then he hired the next guy. And of course, after hiring the guy, he told him what he wanted, and he said, do you think you can do this? He said, I can absolutely build that for you. And it was one of those moments, and I'm sure there's many moments like that in the history of Apple, and there's many moments like that in the history of many companies, where there's this expectation that is so large and moves us past what we think is possible. Um, and so it leads me, I'm bridging these ideas together, right? And so it leads me, one of the ideas that I captured from a book on leadership I'm reading by Ryan Holiday called The Obstacle is the Way. And in the middle of all this commentary, he makes the comment that our perception shapes reality, right? So our perception shapes reality. And I thought, if that's true, right? All of us see an event. I think we talked about this last week or the week before. We all color that event. We create a commentary on the event. I think it was Epictetus that said, it was Epictetus or one of the other Stoic philosophers that said that man and woman, they do not struggle from the events that they encounter, but the meaning that they assign to it. So again, perception, right? But I'm wrestling with this idea that our perceptions literally shape our reality, you know. And if that is true, and I believe that's true, how come we don't really tap into that? How come we don't really tap into that? Um, because the way I come to understand this topic is we really do have the ability to craft our reality. And yet, when you think about that statement and then you sit that statement alongside of some of the statistics, which I don't have in front of me, of people in our country that are on antidepressant medication, you think about what's happening in the world and in our country, and you go, what is not true? Because if we really, our perception of our world shapes the reality of our world, and we have the authority to shape the reality, why is the reality not shaped in such a way that is benefiting us? Right. So I know I said a lot. I think it all connects well. It connects in my mind. It might not connect in your mind. But I go back to the overarching statement, or the overarching idea is, for a person like me as a leader, I'm always driving at a target, or I'm always helping a client get to achieve a goal. There's always something very specific, something measurable, something tangible. And then once we hit it, we identify the next one. And of course, as a coach and a practitioner, I want there to be a quality of life, and I want people to enjoy the journey. But I don't think I enjoy the journey because I'm so wired to want to achieve the goal, to the point where it's not obsessive, but I spend a tremendous amount of energy agonizing over that goal being achieved. And so I don't know, when I hear people say, well, you just got to enjoy the journey. You have to focus on the moment. You got to control what you can. I believe all those things to be true. I haven't somehow achieved that bliss, where I've got these lofty goals, and yeah, they're huge goals, and it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a miracle. But yeah, I'm also just so at peace with all of this. Like, I'm not that guy. I'd like to be him, but I'm not that man. So how do you guys, what are your thoughts on this as a concept? How do you manage that? Do you see yourself more as just more consumed with, the goal and and what you get from the goal? Or have you actually figured out a way? What does enjoy the journey mean to you? And are you achieving that in your lives? Okay, Jim.
Well, I wrote down a bunch of stuff as you were talking, just things that I think about, and right. So this one of the things I wrote down is it's the story that we tell ourselves, and
Yeah.
it's very easy for us to get to that I'm not good enough, right, etc. Right, which takes me back to Marshall Goldsmith's stuff on habits and daily routine and different things like that, where the concept of did I do my best, right? In other words, not did I succeed or not succeed in achieving my goal for today, or moving towards that long-term goal, but did I do my best today to work towards that, right? In other words, because things come up, right? There's days that are
Right.
just all the influences, even with everything that impacted me, I still did my best because I took like one step towards it, um, type of thing. So, uh, there's all of that comes into play, um, and then it's the power of positivity, right? Again, it goes back to that story that we tell ourselves, right?
Right.
We very often tell ourselves we move down the path of negativity. I didn't do my best today, I didn't meet my goal today, whatever. Instead of focusing on that power of positivity,
Yeah.
um, to switch the narrative in your mind
Yeah.
of what you're telling yourself.
Yeah, well, two things, Jim. Thank you. That was excellent. Let me speak to the first one, or the second one first. The power of positivity. That's all about this resiliency training that right now I'm hosting in a coaching group that I created called Call to Rise. And it's all based on the idea that we are going to, in the very near future, either we're in hardship or a difficult moment or one is coming. But resiliency can be measured by this ability for us to go into a disruptive or challenging thing or event and come out on the other side successful. But also in that time, what can be measured is your well-being, right? And there's a difference between getting through something successfully but getting wrecked by it. But yeah, you won the lawsuit, you completed the task, but now you're wrecked, right? Resiliency is the idea that you can actually be buoyant and go through this successfully. And so that's one of my focuses right now on my personal training. And I'm training that into this group, which is great. But the other thing you talked about, and this is kind of goes hand in glove, is the story, and what's driving, those goals, And I guess we can put maybe corporate America just aside for a second, but just talk about us individually. And I don't know if it was on this call, or I think it might have been on my other coaching group, but we talked about the idea that um, many people are driven from their brokenness. Did we talk about that last week here in this class? We did. That people, especially men, can be driven from things that happened earlier that propel them forward. As I sat in a coaching call last week, one of the guys that is in the group has a PhD in organizational leadership, has just done really well in a professional sense, and is a smart guy. But as he told his story, where he landed on it was a lot of his education was an attempt to win the approval of his father, who was a physician. Right. So the drive of the goal came from a brokenness, right? It wasn't just this altruistic, I want to make a big splash. So I appreciate what you're saying, Jim. I think, it's this idea of what is the story that's driving you, you know? Again, what I'm putting forward in this conversation is this idea that in Western society, can you really enjoy the journey and be goal focused, goal oriented, and highly driven? That's the question, because I don't know if I've achieved that. So, but I like what you're saying. Check
Does
your
it,
story and measure your positivity.
well, does it also come down to being realistic about these goals, right? Um, sometimes we are unrealistic, right? We set goals and then we start talking about time management and, oh, I just don't have enough time to get all these, right? Well, no, it's not time management, it's task management. You put too many tasks into the spectrum where there's certainly not enough time to complete those. And so that sometimes comes down with the goal thing, right? The goal is too lofty, right? Or we're not realistic about the goal, so it's really not achievable, and therefore it promotes that negativity. It promotes that, like, I don't get there, and so now I'm in that vicious circle.
Well, and to throw that back at you, though, there are some people that would say that being realistic is a dirty word, right? They're going to say if you're a visionary and you want to change the world and do great things, you got to set your sights high and be willing to fail. So,
Well,
of
yeah, and break it down though. I mean,
course.
right? And I think that goes back to that comment. You could have that lofty goal, but where that negativity comes is every day, you whittle yourself down because you're not it's like, but it goes back to that, am I at least doing my best to try to get there?
Right. Ron?
Good morning. Uh,
Good morning.
Interesting topic. Sorry I'm late. I was on the road. I didn't want to have a wreck on the way here. Interesting topic. I I used to think I had to empty my inbox every day. That idea, and if not empty it, transfer it to the next bucket, at least to the next thing. Move it on down the line, if you know what I mean. Um, I was driven by that, and it created an unsustainable performance measure You can't. I just don't even try to empty my box every day. My daughter and I, she's an attorney, so semantics is everything. Um, so the way we live. Um, I have what I used to call a to-do list, and now I have a list that I call things that need to be done. Doesn't give a time. These are just things that are on the list. So, and then Mike Staver is much like you for business coaching with our company, and he says, don't worry about your to-do list. He says each day start out with 3 or 4 things that you want to accomplish that day. So very, very short term. At the end of this day, I want these 3 things accomplished. One is I've got to submit my mileage. I have to, and reimbursement. I have to have conversation with a rabbi over a prevention workshop that we've done. Those are things that I need to accomplish daily. Those are very near the vest kind of things. And some of them are things that I have to get this report completed by the end of the day. I gotta submit report today, and so but they're incrementally, and that but my and then I do on my things that need to be done. Some of those will get checked off. The other thing I have had to learn, Joel, is relentless long-term vision. I think many of our goals and objectives are too short term. I think that's just Jeff Bezos is on a project. I think I've talked to you about the Long Now project, LONG Now, NOW project. Their shortest goal is 100 years term. They have things that they're planning that will be beyond them. So they're thinking long haul. They have some that are 1,000 years for preserving language. One of them is called the Rosetta Stone Project, and so they have. You go to the airport and you see signs in 20 different languages all stacked up there. Well, they have about 140 languages, and they start with the biggest letters and they spiral them down because over the course of all history, people have been magnifying things. So it gets smaller and smaller and smaller as it goes in the circle. So just things like that. And then so having longer term goals, and I don't know who I heard it from, but it's called relentless long-term vision. Relentless doesn't mean I'm going to mow everybody down, but this is my long-term vision. If to get Bible-y on you, thy word is a light unto my path and a lamp unto my feet. So the light is where I'm going. That's that long-term vision. And the steps I've got to take, I have to have lights on my feet. And then recognizing progress toward that vision. In AA and NA, they say progress, not perfection. So if I'm progressing toward that, if I can, and I've had to get really good at recognizing progress towards the long-term goal, because those are going to be a bunch of tiny little increments. So I think that, and then the other thing is we have time versus the clock paradox. In Africa, they say we have the time, America has clocks. So it's a way of thinking about things. So they say we have the time, and I think I'll leave you at that. But it has helped me reduce performance anxiety that I've got to achieve. I got to achieve. Yes, I do. But all achievement is one step and one step and one step. And sometimes the step I take now is going to inform the next step, whether I know what that step is going to be. Okay.
Yeah. It's great, Ron. I took notes. Sarah, Baya?
So, hi everyone. Sorry, I was late too. That's the I hope you're all doing well. I will say I do feel this tension. I used to deal with it in a certain way that I will say was more get discipline, diligence, get things done. But I think I'm much more in a place where I'm learning to be less nervous about it and less forceful about it, I would say. But be comfortable in the tension, and when I'm in the tension, to pause, because I do believe that the tension sometimes is telling me something. And for example, sometimes I have to reevaluate the motivation of my heart. And so it's not a bad thing to have the tension, because the tension helps you to pause and say, okay, what am I doing? And then I think I like goals, and I do have goals. And I'm a little bit also like Ron is, I look at my list loosely. That means there's the thing that I need to do absolutely today, and there's the thing that I know I need to do. But I think if I focus mostly on the list and the goals, I can really lose the purpose or the vision. And I think for me, it's much more important the purpose of the vision, because the purpose and the vision get me to a place where I'm okay with not necessarily okay, but I accept the discomfort of delays, because they are good usually. For example, lately I'm in a situation where I have to deal with that, okay? And so the fact that I took the pause, and the fact that I accepted that maybe I need to reevaluate the timing and all this, it puts me to a place where I'm more focused on the connection that are built in the middle of it than in just the goal. And so what I do believe is that the journey and the goal are important. And I think it's a different spirit that is present when you manage both, you surrender both in a spiritual way, and the moment where you are more forceful and more determined as a person. This is my own goal, and I'm going to do it my way.
It's great, Baya. I'm going to come back to you, Ron, after I just finish this thought with a couple of things that Baya shared. I really like the idea of over-focusing on the goal can cause us to lose the vision. Those are my words. That's what I got from that. That's very powerful, because why that's meaningful to me is, even I can have very ambitious goals, but why am I doing these things? And I think that in and of itself can comfort me in the fact that if you're pointed in a direction that's a good one, then that is enough. Which leads me to my second thought, which is where I'm finding a lot of recent comfort in enjoying the journey is I've wake up in the morning, I say, okay, what are my top 3 frustrations? And then underneath those 3, I ask myself, what can I control and what is uncontrollable? And it's often the uncontrollable thing that when I let go of that, it really makes the frustration manageable for me. Because I know that I can control my work effort, I can control optimism, I can control perception, but I can't control other people's desire to want something, the things that are out of my control. And so I think that's really helped me in this particular subject matter, was separating those 2 things out and waking up each morning after I've reflected on a concept and I've reflected on what I want to put in front of me. Then I say, okay, where am I frustrated? What are my sources of frustration today? And separating out control versus uncontrolled. Okay, Rod. And then I want to hear from you, Sarah.
So Baya triggered a couple of thoughts in my mind. I have 2 examples. One is we were working, one of our contracted things is sustainability, building sustainability, and capacity building. And so we were working in substance use prevention in the north part of our county, and a particular few people that were working with us decided to break off and have their own group. And my staff were like, you know, and it was frustrating because they were actually pick us, don't pick them, pick us, don't pick them, because they knew the locker room with us a little bit. And I told the staff, I reframed that. I says, you know, that they're moving off and doing this actually frees us to do other things. And so let's not give up or give in. Let's let and then be. Let's let them and let's be this. And we've actually probably more than doubled the capacity to provide that service between someone who broke off to compete against us and us focusing on other things that were moving down the road. So that was capacity building by division, which doesn't make sense mathematically. Your capacity is supposed to be a multiplication. The other one was we have a long-term goal in our region, is that schools have substance use prevention messaging appropriate in every school sanctioned activity, every and time binding in the SMART goals. Time binding is unrealistic. I just need to know I need to move that. So we got one to in this particular thing, another one in that one. And right now we have substance use prevention messaging in all announced sports in one school district. We move one thing at a time, going from what was in football games messaging to and cheerleaders and the band to now cross country. And cross countries are intramural, so that's multiple schools that are getting impacted, and then they're taking that philosophy to their schools. We had a like intramural sports, cross country, track and field. We've had volleyball, swim, and so each one of those was incrementally, and by not time binding it, it'll freed us up to make gradual steps. And do you want to achieve the thing, or do you want to affect long-term culture? And so if we're about achieving a culture of this, that's going to take a lot longer, and you just have to celebrate the progress, the measurable increments towards that. And so I think that's, and it's again back to this time binding things. I think Old Testament says old men dream dreams and young men see visions. It's the difference between dreams and visions. Martin Luther King did not say, I've got a 5-year plan, a 6-point capital game project, and incremental steps each year. That he says, I've got a dream. And if he had time bound that dream, it wouldn't have made progress.
That's an interesting thought. Thank you, Ron. That's a really interesting thought.
Can I say just one thing, one word? You can stop a person with goals. You cannot stop a person with a vision.
That was more than one word, but I'm going to let that stay in the recording because it was powerful. That was great, Baya. That was very, very powerful. It really was.
I agree. I agree with that so much. That dream can push you past fear. Yep. That dream gives you courage versus goals don't always do.
Yeah, that's great, Sarah.
I appreciate gosh, a lot. I think in this conversation, in this group, I always see how much of a work in progress I am. It's always inspiring. I always appreciate the conversation. Just a couple things. I really like what you said, Ron, about how to view competitors who break off and, have a competitor spirit with you versus collaborative. That there's so many ways to see that. Yeah, you get so many positive ways. It's like the message is just getting out a different angle. You know, more good can happen, you know, and if you kind of embrace them as a friend, even though they may be starting out as a competitor, that, you know, it can change the dynamic of, yeah, this is, you know, this is another ally here that's doing different things, or, you know, it would not be maybe the first reaction, but there's so many good things that can actually come from that. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I've learned a few things about that too, you know, being both ways. At first being reactive, and then at another time, more recently, of really just embracing that. And, you know, how that can just widen the field of getting the dream out there. You know, even if somebody else's intention is to be competitive, you know, it's like, it's okay. It's okay. Just stay the course and, you know, be good to people and keep that vision alive. I think the thing that I find interesting too, Joel, which I think is very common in these conversations, is I feel personally, I'm very wired differently than you are. So I always, I really appreciate your strengths, because your strengths are not my strengths.
Right.
And, it's really interesting for me. What I have to do, what I consciously do, is I consciously put myself many times out of my comfort zone. And so that forces me to be in a different zone than I'm comfortable in being in. And so, but what I have found is, because that can be always just by nature be very stressful for me. I can feel very anxious. I can feel ill-equipped to get these goals. And I'm not even in my comfort zone. But what I have found is, again, if I do focus on the process and really, if I focus on always empowering others, it helps me. If I focus on holding on to the goal loosely, it helps me. That failure is okay.
Right.
So if I get myself out of my comfort zone, that puts a fire under me,
Right.
that I have to get moving somehow. And then, yeah, holding on loosely, but then using all that to keep focusing on empowering other people.
Yep.
I'm not using that as a strategy. It's just something that helps me. It helps me be in those places that are very uncomfortable, or I don't have the steps to get to the goal.
Right.
But definitely that dream and that vision is what helps me to overcome fear also.
Yeah.
So,
Great.
but anyway, I always appreciate the conversation because I feel like I'm around people that have very different strengths than I do. And so that's always encouraging and inspiring. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. No,
I love what Sarah shared. Can I say I really love what Sarah shared, because I think I'm like her. We have different strengths, and you know what I got from what she said is something that I wrote also, because I think it's important. It's the purpose is always important. I forgot to talk about it, and I'm glad she went there, because I think the purpose is important. Am I trying to, is my vision to do something to glorify myself, or is it to bring, to contribute to the benefit of others? You know, because, you know, in my profession, I work with a lot of people sometimes that have been successful. They have what they wanted, but they are not happy.
right.
And so they got there, the goals are there, they are successful and all this. And then there's this void. And I think the void is because, yes, they got to that place where they say, if I have that or I accomplish that, I will be someone. And they realize, okay, I accomplish it and I feel the same inside. And it's the emptiness of self-glorification and the focus on, oh, I'm that person, versus, wow, I contributed to the benefit of others. Not only this thing has been accomplished, but I have all this richness of relationships because of it.
Yeah.
And I can see people prospering and doing well because of it. So I do believe that the motivation of the heart is key to what I call real success, not what our culture is telling us is success.
Yeah. Well, and what you just shared, this is my interpretation of that. How it sits on me is, I think for people that maybe struggle with enjoying the journey and are overly fixated on the goals, maybe they need to ask themselves, does your journey, is it being fueled by the benefit of others? And are you enjoying relationships along the way? Because then I think that's where perhaps the journey does not get enjoyed, is when you're driving at all the tangible, strategic, practical ways to achieve it. And that could come at the expense of the relationships and the other things that are meaningful, right? So, and the only thing I was going to say to you, Sarah, is, yeah, you know, of course, I feel the same way in the other direction. I get a lot from you, you know, like when I think about you, I think about you. You are a visionary. You're an empath, or you're empathetic, and you're a connector. And when you were talking, what came up for me was that one thing that I learned in when I got a certification in this tool that is an assessment tool that's used for building teams. And the saying was, you lead where you're strong and team where you're weak. And it just stays with me. I always think about that, and it really does make sense. You know, that you do lead where you're a visionary and empathetic, and you connect other people, and then you have to team in those areas in a very intentional way. The things that you feel that come up for you, you know, like, do I have a right-hand person that does that for my vision? You know, that's going to put you in the next category. Any of us, because we can't do it alone. So, all right, Ron, is your hand back up for a third time? I'm not counting.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, good.
The biggest lie in the world is I only got a few things to say. So I lead where I'm strong and team where I'm weak. I personalize that. I hope you don't mind. Lead where I'm strong, team where I'm weak. I wanted, there's two things that there are some people that are very concrete and linear. They don't have the mental plasticity to do anything other than follow lists and procedures and steps. In the Navy, we had the PMS. It's the PMS where you're working maintenance system, prescribed maintenance system, where everything you follow, this thing, check, you're done. It's been checked. And you need people that are very good at that and don't mind doing that. There are people that can be very good at that and don't like it either.
Right.
You know, like following things too tightly. And so for example, if you don't, I had a friend of mine, he's a well-known, I won't say his name because it'll put people on one side of the aisle or the other. He said, if you don't like doing something, don't be good at it. Because, you know, just let other people do the things they're good at. And don't do the things you don't like to do. But concrete versus plasticity, I think, are two things here, Joel, because in terms of goal accomplishment and timelines and tracking, you need project managers. That's a team. We need a project manager. In business meetings, you need a timekeeper and a sergeant at arms to regulate the conversation, to move on. And so those people are the teamers, because I could go for weeks on one thing. I mean, I can overthink a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but I need people to regulate. Ron and Joel, you're good at that. Okay, Ron, we got 3 minutes to go. Make it and go. Because people who are very not time driven need people to remind them we've got to get this done.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Thank you for the commentary, Ron. Baya, you have 6 minutes. I'm only going to give you 3 of those, because then I need 3 minutes to wrap up. Take what you need.
Yeah, no, I have just a few minutes. I just wanted to,
Oh, you're skipping out, Baya.
because I think it's very powerful. Oh, sorry. Am I there or no?
You're back now.
Okay, I guess. You're not hearing me. Okay. So I wanted to go back to what Sarah said, because it's very powerful. You unmute?
No, you're good.
Okay. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I will say that you want a good team. There's two things that I think when she was talking about the contributing to the benefit to the best of others, to contributing to others. I think in any team building that is going to work well, you have two things that you need to be able to do as a visionary or as a leader, is building trust and empowering people.
Mhm.
And when you're good at that, you can really create, you can really give your vision and have people work together. And the question that I want to put there is, are we good today in those groups that we create in those companies and all this, as building trust and empowering people?
It's great. Well, that's great. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. If you're listening in, of course, we're all available for a reply and a response, but there's a lot there that's, I think, very meaningful. I think a lot was shared that has a ton of value to share with your team, with people in your life that you feel like would benefit from a conversation like this. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you hopefully next time soon.